With Scarlet and Violet base set just around the corner on the 31st of March and rotation shortly after, 2 weeks after, at the European International Championships in London, I thought it about time we look at rotation. Currently it's everything D onwards. D block is going to rotate, however, so we're going to have E, F, G. So in this video, we're going to take a look at some of those important cards rotating, some of those that you will need to take out of your decks, and potentially some replacements coming in Scarlet and Violet.
Welcome to the channel. As usual, we've got tons of great things for you. So, gotta catch them all. And now, take it away.
So we're going to start first with the Pokemon, the non-VMAX Pokemon, and there's some have had some impact, stuff like Zekrom we've seen in a few decks. We've seen Jolteon have some impact against another contender on here, the Inteleon line. We'll get into those a little more because they were quite a big deal. We had Mad Party, which had some impact. We had Frostmoth, which is going to be fantastic in Gym Leader, but no longer legal in Standard. We had Obstagoon and Galarian Zigzagoon, which is technically going to be replaced by Hawlucha. That is going to be one of the promos in Scarlet and Violet, so if you're attending pre-releases, fingers crossed you get one of those. And then more recently, we saw some impact with the Amazing Rares, the Rayquaza. A lot of those, well, all of those are rotating. The Raikou. Trying to think which others we've seen. We've seen a little Kyogre. Obviously a Vettel as well. Outside of that though, some of the biggest cards we're losing is obviously a Rangaroo, which has been massive in Lost Box. But it's been quite a good card to work some strategies in general. It never really had much impact, but Pickaxe was a good combo with it. There's been a ton of good combos with it, and it is going to be a card that is sorely missed. We are going to be losing Weezing, which recently we've seen have a massive impact. A very annoying impact. A lot of players getting quite upset, some visibly on stream, some of us quietly at home. It's such a nasty card. It's a one-way ability lock. I'm very happy to see this one go. It's far too easy to set up. It had the Coffin, which could use Ascension, I think it was, to evolve into it instantly. Just not a massive fan of this at all, so that is one I'm happy to see go. I am sad to see Cincino go, but we are going to get Curlier to replace that, which does exactly the same thing with a slightly worse attack, but I've really used it in stuff like Zorobox, so it's not been an attack I've used very often, as it only works for basic energy. We've got Gormandai Snorlax, which I think is probably the biggest loss. I take that back. Shady Dealings is obviously the biggest loss. But Gormandai Snorlax, it's how control decks have worked. It's how slower decks have worked. It's made a lot of impact into some decks, and some decks just aren't viable without him. It's a fantastic card. Same goes for Shady Dealings. Like I said, we're losing Drizzile, we're losing Inteleon. We will still have Quick Shooting Inteleon, but without all the shenanigans around it, I don't think we will see that played. These cards just offered so much consistency. It's unbelievable the impact they had. Saying that, I've played them, I've played against them. I've seen these cards long enough. I am more than happy to see them go now. They've had their moment. Let's move over and see some other cards. I'm very excited to see what we get in these upcoming Scarlet and Violet sets. But we do get to wave goodbye to the Water Lizards, hopefully forever. I'm not a massive fan of the Pokemon, honestly, and the abilities were so powerful. I think maybe overpowered, honestly. Borderline overpowered, so yeah, it's good to see them go as well. Just moving into some of the V and VMAX Pokemon. Obviously, one of the biggest one is going to be Crobat V. It just offered a ton of consistency for decks. It could be splashed into any, very similar to other stuff like Decidueye we've seen before. So it's very hard to replace that. Crobat VMAX did see some play in decks playing Crobat. More particular ones were Arceus V-Star, where it could hit stuff like Mew for weakness. Always a fringe deck, and at points the most dominant deck before stuff like Path to the Peak came. We saw Eternatus VMAX. Again, another one I'm happy to see go because it was normally paired with Weezing, but it's hard to understate the impact it had before all of the shenanigans that came around to stop it. We're losing the Duraludon V, the Steel version, so we're still going to have the Dragon one, which isn't quite as good. It's not as tanky, but it's still an option, meaning it's still a Pokemon we're going to see around. Charizard VMAX had some impact in Charizard V-Star decks, but it was never one that took the format by storm, so I don't think it's going to be one that we're going to miss that much. Probably Center Scorch is probably the fire Pokemon we're going to miss the most. Can't really think of any of us that really had much impact. Another absolute game changer was stuff like Dragapult, one of my favorite VMAX Pokemon we've seen released. We had Zacian V, which even from Sword and Shield, absolutely dominated then onwards. We've seen it now and again, even recently, but yeah, it's had its day. Now, if you're playing Zacian V-Star, you're not going to be playing this good version of the V. We had Eldegoss, which when you dropped it down, you could fetch back supporters. Again, a very useful card. One that we've seen appear in Control quite a few times. We're losing stuff like, Creamy VMAX, which had some impact with Calyrex Shadow Rider, but other than that, not a ton. Orbeetle again, which has appeared now and again. I actually quite like Orbeetle, so I am sad to see that one go. We had Inteleon VMAX, which was used now and again. I wouldn't say we're going to miss it that much, but it was a very powerful VMAX in certain situations. Other than that, I can't really think of many we've seen. Let me know if you think I've missed any in the comments, any you think deserved a mention on this list. I am very excited to move into the EX era now, so yeah, forget VMAX, forget V-Star, forget Vs. Let's see some EX, let's see the game slow down slightly, and hopefully move into a more interesting format for me. Outside of Pokemon though, we also had trainers, and we will get into some special energy and stuff, which does make Lugia I will say different deck. I don't think it's like ruined the deck. It's definitely made it weaker for sure, but I think it's going to see some impact still. We're just talking about supporters and trainer cards. We are going to lose Marnie, which I would say is probably the biggest one. We do have stuff like Judge still in format, so in decks where Marnie was played, we're probably just going to see them switch around. We are going to lose Sonya. We're going to lose Birdkeeper, which was great into those matchups where you would be paralyzed, or other shenanigans like Vikavolt, which I probably should have mentioned for V Pokemon because that has had quite an impact recently. So let's just pretend I mentioned that. Let's flash it up on screen. Let's remember Birdkeeper. Let's remember Vikavolt. I don't think we're losing a ton of other supporters that are going to have a massive impact, honestly. In terms of items, I think the biggest one is going to be Quick Ball, but again, we are getting stuff like Nest Ball to replace that. It doesn't work quite as well, so stuff like Luminion, or if Crobat or Eldegoss was still around, Nest Ball wouldn't work with those because they need to be played from our hand. Nest Ball throws them straight onto the bench. So it is going to be slightly awkward for some searching. I think in most cases, in like Lost Box, it's going to be better, but most cases, it's just not going to be as good. It also doesn't offer as much versatility in discarding, so it's going to be interesting in search because we do also lose Evolution Incense, which is another big card. It's just going to be more difficult to search stuff out. We've already seen people using stuff like Capturing Aroma, which isn't a good card, but we're sort of stuck with it. We've got Nest Ball, we've got Ultra Ball, we've got Battle VIP Pass. So there are still options to search out Pokemon. I think the other biggest hit and one I'm happy to see go is Scoop Up Net. Now, I've been playing a ton of Lost Box, so anytime I Sableye down damage and then see a Scoop Up Net comes down, it just feels, it undoes my turn and it doesn't feel good, honestly. Am I right, fellow Sableye players? It's nice to see damage stick now. It's also very annoying when players reuse stuff like the Inteleons, the Zigzagoons. Picking stuff up and reusing abilities was very powerful. Scoop Up Net in general is going to go down as one of the most powerful cards around. I don't think we'll see it in the format anytime soon, so it's another card I'm happy to wave goodbye to. Outside of that, there's not a ton that affect the game in general. There's Ordinary Rod, which I think is a big one, but we do have stuff like Clara, we've got Miriam come in. These are supporters, so it's going to be a slight change in how you play the game. We're losing a few tool cards. Air Balloon is probably the biggest one. There's a few fringe ones like Parasol or Cape of Toughness, which in certain decks are very good, but outside of that weren't used very often. And then other than that, honestly, it's just specific stuff. So like Metal is losing Metal Saucer, Water Pokemon are losing Capacious Bucket, but there's nothing like general that's going to impact it too much. Again, if you think I've missed anything, drop them in the comments below. There's obviously fringe stuff I'm forgetting here. We are losing Palpad, but I do think I've seen something about one being reprinted in the Scarlet and Violet set. Don't hold me to that because I might just be misremembering something, but I do think we're getting Palpad back. If not, it definitely deserves a place on this list. And then stadium-wise, the only one I think worth mentioning is Training Court. Obviously, that can just be used in so many different decks. It's such a good trainer. It's such a good stadium. So that's one I'm going to be sad to see go. Like I say, finally, let's touch on special energy though. The things that made Reggie so good, Lugia so good, Aurora energy is going to be rotating. I think that just kills off Reggie's entirely. I think it makes Lugia less versatile, which is good because it was far too powerful. I think it brings it in line with other decks, which is actually a really good change for the game. We are losing Twin Energy, which I'm kind of sad about. I love playing that in Zorobox. I do think it was a well-designed card. It's what DCE should have been back in the day. Variations like Turbo Energy in this are what we should see. So I'd like to see this reprinted at some point or some variation of it. Capture Energy, obviously another big one for consistency and getting out Pokemon. Powerful Energy, which obviously hits stuff like Blissey, Lugia very hard. It means things like Stoutland can't get those big knockouts with Powerful Energy anymore, so we're probably not going to see that played. Smaller ones which saw fringe play, like the Heat Energy, Speed Energy, Horror Energy, stuff like that, we're obviously going to miss. More recently, Wash Energy has had quite an impact, but I'm just excited to see new special energy, new abilities on them and see what they come up with in Scarlet and Violet. But we haven't seen much in terms of special energy, in terms of like stadiums. We've seen the odd one like Beach Court and stuff, which is going to be fantastic. But there is so much more to come in Scarlet and Violet. Like I say, if you think I've missed any, drop them in the comments below. Let me know which card you're going to miss the most. That's all I've got for this episode though. If you want to see more Pokemon stuff, more matches, more tabletop content, more board games, all of that stuff, let me know in the comments below. Make sure you subscribe if you want to see it, and I will catch you in the next one.